Can I just ask a question? What do 75% of people do when they get a ballot literally sent to their door? Like it's in their mailbox and they say, I'm going to throw this thing out. I just don't care. Doesn't matter to me. Good morning, 6:04. It is great to be here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. You can stream us as always as you get your morning started on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So yesterday, the results came down. In Olathe, they approved a $389 million bond for the schools. In DeSoto, it was a $100 million bond approval. And I told you in the last several days that I believed it was going to pass. It's very difficult for these things, frankly, to not pass. What's surprising to me is that only 23% of voters took part in the election. Like, they could not have made this easier for you. They put the darn thing in your mailbox, and then they said, put it back in your mailbox, and we'll count your ballot for you. You don't have to literally do anything outside of fill it out. To me, it was very telling of where we are as a society and culturally when the first people oftentimes to complain about anything are going to be oftentimes those people who do not actually participate until it's too late. But what also surprised me was the margin of victory. 63% of voters in Olathe saying yes to the $389 million bond to consolidate of 4 schools, turn them into 2, and then, of course, make capital improvements across the district. 63 to 37. That was a bit of a surprise. I might have ballparked like 57, 58 to 42, 43, something like that. But it did pass with total ease. And then in DeSoto, same deal. Just under 24% of voters decided that they were going to vote in this mail-in ballot election. And the numbers came in as follows. It was... what do we have here? 62% voting yes in DeSoto, 38% voting no. Almost an identical margin of victory in DeSoto as what you got in Olathe. And then in Edgerton, voters there approved a 1% special purpose city sales tax to do things like stormwater infrastructure and improvements to the city streets. Like, okay, not the worst thing in the world, but I would think that improving the city streets would be a basic thing that the government does. And that's where I struggle with that one in Edgerton. Because I'm like, at the base level, what government should do on a municipal level is fix the roads, is make sure that the stormwater infrastructure is where it needs to be. If that's not part of your basic expense line, I don't know what else would be. I mean, that just seems like such an obvious thing that before we do anything, we're not hiring any new people. We're not doing anything fancy until we know that the roads are taken care of and the stormwater infrastructure is where it needs to be. That's not additional taxes. That's like, in your own house, right? You're doing all your basics. Your basics are what? Your food, your groceries, your electric bill, all your utilities, things like that. It's like saying, no. I'm going to buy a new car with a $1,200 a month note. I'm going to make that a basic expense. And then, whoa, I've got no money left for groceries. I can't eat. So many of these city governments have it all backwards. But I will say, up in Lansing, as you heard John Anthony note, top of the hour news, Lansing school district voters said no to 2 school bond issues to pay for aging infrastructure repairs. So it was very similar to what you saw in DeSoto and Olathe yesterday. And question 1 went down relatively easily, 1,500 to 1,100 votes. And the approval of the bonds would have meant $30 million towards improvements, including HVAC systems, roofs, parking lots, tennis courts, with no mill levy increase. Same exact thing. Question 2 also failed at the polls, and that one failed by a 2-to-1 margin. Money for that bond would have put $5 million towards sports field improvements and would have raised the mill levy by 0.746. costing the owner of a $400,000 home about $34 a year or just under $3 a month. So that's how they were trying to pitch that. And both of them went down in flames in Lansing. So Lansing voters, they showed up and they showed out. And they said, you know what? In this climate, over the last 5 years, we think that you can work with in the budget that we have given you, which is incredibly fair and incredibly reasonable. And you look at this from a big picture perspective, and this is something that, we had touched on here over the last couple of days, but I think it's important to note that when you look back in the last 30 years, and this was put out by the Kansas Department of Revenue, the last 30 years, inflation in the state of Kansas has run about 90%. Local governments have increased their property tax spend, the amount of money that they charge you in your property taxes, okay? They have increased their spend 272%. When it comes to the school districts, they have increased their spend 224%, well over double the inflation rate over that period of time of about 90%. And by the way, the Kansas population is up 14%, and the school districts are actually shrinking in many cases because people are either leaving them, because some people are obviously homeschooling, using other education sources. You obviously have, yes, a birth rate decline. See, the schools all blame it on birth rate declines. That's easy. That's a very easy thing to do. There's more to it than that. People are seeking out alternatives. They're looking for different options. But when you get an approval yesterday by 25 points in DeSoto and Olathe, you're just going to feel emboldened. It's what I thought was going to happen, so I'm not sitting here telling you anything I didn't think was going to happen. The margin was a bit of a surprise to me, but nothing else was. Because it's very difficult, especially for people who aren't paying attention, to say no to the schools. And not that any of us want to. I mean, I have kids in the schools. Mark has kids in the schools. We do right now. But at the same time, it's fair to ask, what are you doing with the hundreds of millions of dollars that you are in charge of right now? And are you being the best stewards of those dollars that you can possibly be? And then on top of that, when you have some of the political drama that has entered into the school space over the last few years, most recently it's all these ICE protests happening specifically in Olathe, whether it's Olathe West, Olathe Northwest, Olathe North. That's where I think parents and just responsible taxpayers have the right to say, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? As proficiency rates go down and your enrollment continues to go down, are you doing and looking out for the best interests of the taxpayer, the parents, and actually, how about this, the students themselves? I know.
Talk about a bombshell.
You can't believe it, right? Total shocker. But those are the questions that need to be asked right now. Do I think there's going to be any self-reflection coming out of this? No. I'm sure the champagne was flowing last night. I'm sure the bids were being doled out on the $400 million. That's what I'm convinced was probably going on last night. And there's not going to be any self-reflection. And that, see, I just wanted it to be relatively close, to be like, all right, maybe we've got to reassess a little bit here. But the way that it went down, I doubt there's an ounce of that going on right now. And that right there, that is just too bad. Coming up on KCMO Talk Radio, what is going on this morning with Iran? U.S. stock market futures started to surge in the early morning hours. What do we know and the why behind it all? We'll get to coming up next here on KCMO. So the stock market futures are up this morning as we sit here at 6:18. And the reason for that is because of a report that came out and was dropped in the New York Times in the last couple of hours. So according to the New York Times, Iran has secretly outreached to the Trump administration. Of course, it's not so secret anymore, but they apparently want an off-ramp. And the Trump administration, rightfully so, is saying, Yeah, I'm not buying this one.
You missed the ramp.
Yeah.
It was back in the last exit there,
yes.
buddy.
You've been on the highway for a month and a half with a chance to get off the ramp, and you chose not to do it. So here's what the New York Times reported very early this morning. In public, Iran's surviving leaders have defiantly refused to negotiate with President Trump to end the American and Israeli assault on their country. I love how that's framed in the New York Times, by the way. But a day after the attacks began, operatives from Iran's Ministry of Intelligence reached out indirectly to the CIA with an offer to discuss terms for ending the conflict, according to officials briefed on the outreach. U.S. officials, reports the New York Times, are skeptical. Good. That either the Trump administration or Iran is really ready for an off-ramp. Still, the offer, which was made through another country's spy agency, raises critical questions about whether any Iranian officials could put into place a ceasefire agreement with the Tehran government in chaos, as its leaders are methodically picked off by the Israeli strikes. White House and Iranian officials did not respond to requests for comment. The CIA also declined to comment. So this is Iran basically saying, okay, fine. They finally got punched in the mouth, and now they're trying to salvage what they've got. But then you've got the president of the United States yesterday. I mean, the guy literally is on a full-scale attack of Iran, something that is nearly 50 years in the making. And, he's still doing comedy hour at the White House yesterday when he says this.
Do you have someone in mind right now? Because you said all the people you did have in mind have been taken out. What do you think?
Well, most of the people we had in mind are dead. So, we had some in mind from that group that is dead. And now we have another group. They may be dead also, based on reports. So I guess you have a third wave coming in. Pretty soon we're not going to know anybody.
But pretty soon I'm just going to have Marco Rubio run the place again. I mean, Marco, you can put on another hat. We're running out of guys. We're killing them all. I mean, he's doing that, obviously, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but he's not wrong. There was the report yesterday that came from Trey Yingst on Fox News that, the next round of potential leaders in Iran got together yesterday, and the Israelis blew him up and killed him. So they're like going down to, I guess, the third group of guys next to figure out who might be able to run the country. And then Trump's sitting there in the Oval Office yesterday being like, yeah, I had some guys in mind, but they're dead. They're gone. I got to talk to a next group of guys, I guess. I got another round of interviews. You're fired. He's like doing an apprentice routine up there. It's hilarious.
Exactly. You see me.
Except we've got, massive global shifts happening in real time. So the offer from Iran to try to get an off-ramp with the U.S. and Israel was described on the condition of anonymity to the New York Times by Middle Eastern officials. Israeli officials want a weeks-long campaign to inflict maximum damage on Iran's military capabilities and perhaps cause Iran's government to collapse. They have urged the United States to ignore the approach of Iran. And for now, the offer is not considered serious in Washington. And after saying for days that he was open to discussing a deal with Iran, Trump posted on social media Tuesday morning that it was now too late for talks. Good. And not that I'm interested in some full-scale war. I'm not. Most of us aren't. In fact, there was polling I saw yesterday from CBS News that I shared on X at Pete Mundo that made it clear the vast majority of Americans approve of the military action against Iran if this lasts days or weeks. 76% of Americans approve if this is just a few weeks. If it goes on for months, the approval drops to 46%. If it goes on for years, the approval drops to 13%. I'm in that days, weeks camp. I'm with the 76% of Americans who say, you know what? For a few weeks, we crush the Ayatollah. We hit the reset button in Iran. Is there a risk that worse people come to the top? There always is. But this seems like something that is a worthy and just cause for the entire West right now. So I'm in that camp. If you get to months, then yes, you are going to lose the narrative. And I think President Trump understands that.
My perspective of having grown up being confused as a young child, you see Vietnam all over the TV, Viet Cong guerrillas, I'm confused, guerrillas.
Yeah.
It's a whole different war. To your point that you brought up yesterday, you were mentioning social media, but I will also highlight, as Fox News has done too throughout the day, the efficiency of this.
Bingo.
So I hope the efficiency leads to just the days, weeks things and not the months, years thing that I saw. So I see an improvement in our efficiency, and that makes me all the more for it at my age here.
I love that. And here's the other thing. You can compare that to Iraq in the middle. We have technology today that we just didn't have 25 years ago. I mean, it took us 10 years to find bin Laden. That would not be happening. It would not, if, God forbid, a 9/11 happened and we had to go take out a bin Laden, whoever the equivalent of that is today, it would not take us 10 years. There's no doubt about it in my mind. So now you sit here today and you say to yourself, all right, if this is something that is a truly days and weeks war, if you want to call it that, then you know what? Let's be done with it. Let's wipe our hands clean and let's move on. That's it. And I hope that the president understands that he does have a window here, but it is a very short window and small window where he can get this job done, have the vast majority of Americans supporting him. But after that, he's got to get out. I mean, there's not going to be a great appetite for this. 913-408-7957. Oak Grove is where Derek is early on a Wednesday. What's up, Derek?
Hey, sorry, I had to clear my throat. You guys said that it's really efficient, operations they're doing against Iran. So why don't you give us an estimate then on how much you think it costs when they move these aircraft carriers around? Is that just free? I mean, they don't audit the Pentagon, so, it's really efficient. How much do you think that costs?
Well, I've seen estimates anywhere from $600 million to $1 billion.
Per what? Per day? Per hour?
That's what I've seen as the cost thus far.
600 million. Wait, can you repeat that? How much?
600 million to upwards of $1 billion.
I would guess that it's way more than that. Like, we're exhausting all of our stockpiles of ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a concern to you? Like, how much we're spending on top of, like, exhausting our own resources?
I mean, yeah, I'm not looking to spend more money on anything. I mean, I think that's a fair point to bring up, Derek, but it's like anything else. If you're not going to spend money on the basics, like we have this rule in our house, when Kate and I have talked about this, we've got a budget like everybody else does in the house, right? What are the non-negotiables? Well, when it comes to eating healthy food, we'll spend more money on that, right? We'll spend more money on good doctors. We'll spend more money on household safety. And if that means we have to cut certain things that are considered frivolous, then we do that. I'm not going to not spend $1 billion when, by the way, we're $37 trillion in debt in this country. I'm potentially keeping this country and the entire West safe and key allies safe over $1 billion. I mean, I hate to say this, but it's a drop in the bucket at the federal level. So, I mean, yes, does it make me happy that we spent all this money? To Derek's point, no, I'm not like thrilled to go spend another $1 billion. But in the grand scheme of things, nothing else matters if you can't keep your country safe from terrorists on the other side of the world. And yes, you want to keep the cost down. News in 2 minutes, and we're back with a study that's not getting enough attention coming up. And there is a briefing from the Pentagon this morning that's coming up at 7 o'clock. So as news comes out of that Pentagon briefing, first one since Monday, we will get you those highlights here on KCMO. Once again, the Pentagon, as we enter day 5 of Operation Epic Fury, will host a press conference coming up in about 30 minutes. Now, we're talking to you at 913-408-7957. I do have a very important study that is getting overlooked, I will share coming up in less than 5 minutes here on KCMO. But we've got you at 913-408-7957 on a Wednesday. We just heard from a caller before the bottom of the hour, Derek, who's concerned about the cost of the war and the estimates I've seen. I saw an article last night from Forbes that said we're upwards of $1 billion in. which I know $1 billion sounds like a lot, but it actually doesn't sound like a lot to me when you put it into perspective. Jeff's in Oak Grove. He's first up. Hey, Jeff, good morning.
Hey, I was in during Desert Storm. I was on an aircraft carrier, and I just wanted to make a quick response to that last caller. I can understand being concerned about the cost, but these aircraft carriers, these ships aren't just sitting in ports all the time, and these planes and these military men are not just sitting in bases not spending any money. These aircraft carriers are out there moving around and flying flights all the time. When Desert Storm happened, my carrier had just left the Philippines, and we went straight to the Persian Gulf. So we were already out there moving around, flying an aircraft. There's costs that are already associated. So it's going to be maybe additional costs with the bombs instead of them out there.
I was going to say the extra cost is going to be the bombs, not the manpower and not the
right.
The fuel for the aircrafts and things like that, but really about the bombs. Those will have to be rebuilt, obviously.
Exactly, and I think that's the thing that people don't understand is we're already spending money on the ships being out there moving around. So
yeah,
that's the point I wanted to make, and I'll listen. Thank you.
All right, Jeff, thanks for your service, my man. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, John in Topeka, but that's a good point that Jeff just made there, which is that the bulk of the costs are already being spent, right? The only thing you're going to have to replace here is obviously the bombs that are being used, the missiles that are being used in the attacks. John in Topeka. Hey, John.
Hey, good morning. I did a little research on Iran, and I found out that they were supporting well over a dozen terror groups throughout the Middle East and Bahrain, Yemen, Hezbollah, Hamas. I mean, and so they were funneling weapons and such and support to all these different entities, terrorist groups. And then when they came to the table and said, we have enough material to make about 11 nuclear bombs, that just put Trump up against the wall. It's either do something or they're going to have a nuke go off somewhere, Tel Aviv or in Syria or, somewhere in the Middle East. And then that $1 billion that we're spending, that would be a drop in the bucket compared to the chaos and destruction that would follow with the economies going, oh, my God, they got nukes. And, one or two of them go off. They smuggle one in through the southern border. Somewhere because of their terror cell groups that they're worried about now because of Biden's open border policies. I'm just throwing it out there. They put Trump's back up against the wall when they said they got enough material for 11 nuclear bombs.
It's not the best analogy, but what I'm hearing from you is basically this is like doing the oil change so that way you don't have to take care of the big repair when it comes. That's really what we're talking about here. This is minor in comparison to what could happen if you end up in a situation where Iran, yes, does have the nuclear capabilities that they have been talking about and, by the way, threatening for a long time now.
Exactly. And the fact is they're saying they're going to do it. Does Trump cold cock him and knock him out on the first pop, or does he wait and get beat up in the meantime by everybody around him for not doing anything? So, and that way I see it, Trump popped him and said, you're talking smack? Whap.
Yep. That's exactly right, man. I mean, that's. I don't know what else he was supposed to do in that moment. Now, we've tragically lost a handful of service members, 6 already. I mean, that's obviously something that no one wants, from the commander-in-chief to you, to me, to the rest of us. But what are you supposed to do in this specific situation if you're President Trump and if you're Marco Rubio? Now, if these guys turn into, George Bush and Colin Powell 2.0, trust me, there's going to be a lot of us who are going to be like, what are you guys doing? Stop. Knock it off. This is not what anyone signed up for. Mike, go ahead. You're on KCMO in Kansas City.
Yeah, ordnance has to be done every so often. Bombs and stuff, they don't last forever. They have to be militarized and new ones put in their place. In fact, there's a place in Missouri that does nothing else but take military ordnance and get rid of the chemicals. So, I don't know the specifics of these smart things, but these things don't sit there and last forever.
Oh, you're right about that.
More than the milk in your refrigerator does. So the stuff, whether it's used or not, we've already paid for it. and not recycling our ordnance. I think Putin kind of learned that when he invaded Ukraine, and he found out the tires on his big trucks were 15 years old, and they all fell apart because tires were aged.
Yeah,
the
you're right.
They were using in their rifles was misfiring because it was too old.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's a constant situation.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you, man. Thanks so much. You're right. You're absolutely right. Good point. Wes in Gladstone. Go ahead, Wes.
Yeah, so where was everybody worried about the cost whenever Biden was giving Z a free pass and just sending all kinds of stuff over there? One, there will be no quagmire per Secretary of War Haig said. And as far as your comment about, we could get the next bin Laden, there's not going to be another bin Laden. You say you're going to kill Americans, we're going to kill you. And that's not a threat, that's a fact.
You're cutting out there, Wes, but you're right. The intelligence today is so much different than 20 years ago. It is. But you look at Iran, and a couple of callers back, I forget which one it was, might have been Jeff, noted that, you have had the Iranian regime funding terrorism all over the world. No, it was John in Topeka. Sorry there, John. And he noted, and he's right, whether it was Al-Qaeda going back 25 years, whether it was Hamas leading up to October 7th, Hezbollah, all of these different factions of terrorism are largely funded by and had been funded by the Iranian regime. All right? Smitty in Olathe. What's up, Smitty?
Hey, if the Pentagon gets short and runs out of money, we can always get a hold of Olathe School District. They're flush.
Oh, that's outstanding. You're right. Olathe just got $400 million last night. They can lend some to Trump. Oh, my gosh. That's outstanding, Smitty. That's great work, buddy.
Take care.
Have a great day. Take a bow. Oh, that's gold.
Doesn't he do a nice Bill Clinton?
He does, man. He does. Was he on Capitol Hill the other day testifying?
Yep.
Was that you, Smitty? Oh, my gosh. Brian, go ahead. You're on KCMO.
Yeah, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. What's going on?
Hey, so I graduated in '84, and when I from Camdenton High School, and I joined the Navy, and I was sent, and I was actually on the USS New Jersey, which had just got back from Beirut, Lebanon, and our ship was providing shelling and stuff for the Marines. But for the people that don't understand why we do what we do, because when I got to the ship, I was talking to I had met friends, and I had talked to people that were actually over there, and they were telling me stories like, the Marines that were passed away that had been killed, they were flying them out to our ship, and they were putting them in body bags. And you're talking about an 18-year-old kid putting, Marines, fellow service members in body bags. For people that don't understand and don't get it, I don't know that they ever will, but all you have to do is be there and see it once, and then you kind of know what's going on. I mean, I enjoy your show. I just thought I'd kind of say that real quick.
Well, no, Brian, listen. You cannot underestimate and not take seriously the loss of life that has already ensued with 6 service members and is likely to ensue in the days and weeks to come. You're right about that. And that's why there's not going to be a great appetite for loss of American life in this war for any foreseeable amount of time. You're right to bring that up, and I appreciate your service. Thank you, my man. Appreciate that, Brian. You're right. I'm still thinking about, Smitty, too, talking about the Olathe School District handing a loan to Trump for some missiles in the Middle East. Before we get to our 6 at 6, I want to I think it's really important to touch on this story that didn't really get any mainstream media attention, but I saw it yesterday, and I'll post it on my social media pages so you can see it there. I'll share it on X momentarily. There's a new study that is out, and here's what it shows. Among American young adults ages 18 to 24, identifying as LGBTQ, peaked in 2022 at 20%. In 2022, 20% of 18 to 24-year-olds said that they were LGBTQ. that has fallen to 15% as of last year. Now, you might say that's not that big of a number. No, that's a big number. Think about it. In 3 years, there has been a 25% decline in young people calling themselves LGBTQ. You go back to 2014, and in 2014, it was about 7% of 18 to 24-year-olds who said they were LGBTQ. That number nearly tripled in less than a decade. And now it's back down 25% to about 15%. What does that tell you? That it was really more of a social contagion than an orientation. That's not to say that there aren't people who are gay or lesbian or whatever. That's not what I'm saying here. But it was also part of a fad with young people. The number went up dramatically, and now the last 3 years, it has dropped dramatically. That's what's undeniable when you look at the data itself, John.
The new numbers reflect that we've taken in inflation into accounting here, literally, right?
Yes.
I think it was kind of like that. Do you smoke pot when I was a kid in high school? And I think everybody wanted to say they did. I don't know whether they did or not. And it reached a peak at that point, but then it tapers off.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly, if you want to use that, that's an interesting analogy I hadn't thought of. But
that's the one I lived.
Harkens back, yes, exactly,
right,
to the one that you lived through, to your point, which is that, it was kind of the thing. It was in, right? And now people are like, well, maybe that's actually not the case. Maybe that's actually not me. And all you need to see is the precipitous decline in people identifying as LGBTQ over the last 3 years to tell you that there's enough proof to suggest it was much more of a social contagion than it was anything else. Pete Hegseth's damn good at that. 10 minutes in, out, effective, efficient. He just got done at the Pentagon, and we played it here on KCMO Talk Radio, and he just laid it out. 5 days into Operation Epic Fury, here's part of what Pete Hegseth had to say.
This is what the fake news misses. We've taken control of Iran's airspace and waterways without boots on the ground. We control their fate. But when a few drones get through or tragic things happen, it's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad, but try for once to report the reality. The terms of this war will be set by us at every step.
That was Secretary of War Pete Hegseth just 15 minutes ago here on KCMO Talk Radio, saying they're playing for keeps. They have control of the Iranian airspace and waterways, and the terms will be set by the United States. Let's go to Paul. He is in Kansas City on KCMO. Good morning, Paul.
Hey, good morning, Pete. Hey, one thing this conflict's kind of pulled the sheets back and shows how weak our NATO allies are. The British have 2 carrier groups in dry dock. Their prime minister, who's a lawyer, keeps talking about international law. The French, the Germans, the Spanish. But you know who's stepping up? Our Arab allies. But this is why Trump did not want to pay for the British to defend them against the Russians or anything, because these guys been taking our money from us, hoping that we would protect them, and they're freckless. They're terrible.
Yep.
I'm so proud of our Arab allies.
Yeah, you're right about that. Credit where it's due. You're right. Absolutely right, Paul. The Europeans in general have just become a feckless operation.
That's right.
Top to bottom, man. From the Brits to all the rest of them. And
it's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. But to your point, our Arab allies have absolutely stepped up in that part of the region. So as more comes out today, we'll get it to you here on KCMO. We'll have on Taylor Riggs from the Fox Business Network at 7:50 to talk about the markets and how they're getting impacted by all this here on KCMO. Pete Hegseth did a great 10-minute press conference last hour, just after 7 o'clock Central Time. We carried it here on KCMO as he gave an update on Operation Epic Fury. And on day 5 of the operation, the most important thing to come out of this press conference last hour, which was a masterclass from Hegseth. And I say that just because it was 10 minutes on script. Get me the information, give me the details, and get out. Okay? I'm sure that Trump wouldn't like me saying this, but he could learn a thing or two from a Pete Hegseth press conference. It was Perfect. 10 minutes in, out, details. Let's go. Here's the most important thing from Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War.
The two most powerful air forces in the world will have complete control of Iranian skies, uncontested airspace. I hope all the folks watching understand what uncontested airspace and complete control means. It means we will fly all day, all night, day and night, finding, fixing, and finishing the missiles and defense industrial base of the Iranian military, finding and fixing their leaders and their military leaders, flying over Tehran, flying over Iran, flying over their capital, flying over the IRGC, Iranian leaders looking up and seeing only U.S. and Israeli air power every minute of every day until we decide it's over.
That's a huge update from Pete Hegseth. Now, he also went on to say that we are accelerating, not decelerating. He also noted here the mission is not yet accomplished. He said that the terms right now are being set by the United States. We have taken the airspace and the waterways without any boots on the ground. He actually took a shot at, the Bush administration when he said also during this press conference last hour, we've used 2 times the amount of air power that we did in Iraq, minus the nation building and boots on the ground. But there was one thing that he said that was mildly concerning to me, and that's when he noted that we have just begun to fight. My hope here is that the acceleration results in the fight going shorter, not longer. My hope here is that you have such a powerful few weeks that then it's over. And I think that's where the American people are at right now. There was a poll done yesterday by CBS, and it was a really good way to kind of frame the question. Do you approve or disapprove of military action against Iran if you think the conflict would last ... days and weeks, months, or years? And if they keep this thing to days or weeks, the approval is 76% in favor, 24% disapproving. If you look at the months category, the approval drops by 30 points from 76 to 46%. The disapproval jumps by 30 points from 24 to 54%. When you go to years, the approval of that would be 13%. And I think that would include like Lindsey Graham and John Bolton. And that's about it. And then 87% disapprove of that. So there is an appetite for this in the very near term. However, after a few weeks, people are not going to be on board. Because, by the way, in a news cycle where a day feels like a week and a week feels like a month and a month feels like a year, we're going to be sitting here in a month and being like, boy, that war's been going on a lifetime. And it's like, no, it's been about 4 weeks. And that's not a lot of time. But being cognizant of how our social media 24-hour news cycle environment does impact how people feel about the news, I think that's something that the administration does need to note and at least be aware of. Not that you bail on the mission or anything like that, but understanding that the American people have given you a few weeks to achieve the goals. And then at the very least, there has to be obviously a ramp down to all of this and an off-ramp for us. There was a story this morning in the New York Times that broke that basically said the Iranians are now looking for an off-ramp. Guys, you've had years to figure out your off-ramp. Years.
It's kind of like driving in western Kansas. Your next exit's 20 miles away.
Fellas, you had that chance.
Yep.
But, it took Trump killing the Ayatollah and then killing all his backup guys, too, for them to be like, maybe this guy's actually serious about all this. Maybe he means business. And Pete Hegseth says something else he noted last hour. And this could be a question, you want a little water cooler fodder when you get to the office this morning. All right, this is one of those Jeopardy-style questions that could come up. So listen carefully when Pete Hegseth puts into historical context something that has happened during Operation Epic Fury that has not happened since World War II.
In fact, last night, we sunk their prize ship, the Soleimani. Looks like POTUS got him twice. Their Navy, not a factor. Pick your adjective. It is no more. In fact, yesterday in the Indian Ocean, and we'll play it on the screen there, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death. The first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II. Like in that war, back when we were still the War Department, we are fighting to win.
First time we have sunk a ship with a torpedo in that setting since World War II. That's pretty good. In terms of just having that little nugget when you get to the office this morning, you want to look like the smartest guy or gal in the office when you get to work today? Hey, here's a little, although you might look kind of like a clown too. You might look like a know-it-all. So maybe don't use it, but just keep it in your back pocket, okay? And remember, you heard it right here on KCMO. You're not a fan of that, John, are you?
I'm sure there's a few of our listeners that have printed up the T-shirt already to wear.
Don't give them any ideas, man. Don't give them any ideas. Just don't put the KCMO logo on the shirt. That's all I ask, okay? We're going to come after you for copyright infringement. Don't do it.